Today we're building a commander deck around the commander no one loved, Inspirit Flagship. I feel like every Precon deck has a commander that everybody gravitates towards because it's almost the obvious choice, and then the commander that kind of gets thrown to the wayside. Now I will say either one of these being played in the command zone with the Precon is actually pretty solid because they both kind of do the same thing. The only issue is Kylo just does it infinitely better. And I mean infinitely literally, right? Kylo just untaps and taps things a lot better, and he proliferates whenever he taps, so it's kind of just an insane ask not to put that as the commander for the Precon upgrades, and that's kind of just what everyone does. So everybody who wants to build Inspirit is just kind of sitting in the guidelines like, my guy got, the short end of the stick because I don't have any Precon upgrades for him, and that is exactly right. So today we're going to just build an entire deck around him. I do want to say though, this guy is very, very open-ended. We have commanders like this that kind of just can go in any deck, and sometimes those are harder to build and harder to focus just because you could literally shove this guy in any artifact deck and he's going to do a solid job of just being an artifact commander, because really all he does is buff our artifacts up a little bit. He can put charge counters on things, and he's going to be able to give everything hexproof and indestructible. So he's literally just a protection piece in the command zone. What that's going to allow us to do is just be terrible, terrible people and play pieces that people need to remove as soon as possible, but they're not going to be able to because our commander is going to be stopping them. So that's the kind of deck we're building today. With that being said, feel free to click on any of the links in the description down below. The Whatnot link will net you a free $15. You can get 10% off all of your Tolarian Library proxies whenever you use code TT for D. And if you guys would like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying the videos, I really do appreciate it. Now let's read what Inspirit does. This is a 3 CMC commander, 1 blue, 1 red, and 1 white. Legendary creature spacecraft. It does have station, and it has 2 different station abilities. One's at 1 and then the other one's at +8. The first one says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put your choice of a 1/1 counter or 2 charge counters on up to 1 other target artifact. So again, we're either buffing creatures or putting charge counters on our artifacts. And then the next one, our creatures or the flagship's going to gain flying, and other artifacts you control have hexproof and indestructible, and then it's going to be a 5/5. Now the route I took with this commander is going to be a very, very salty one, because once we have the ability to give all of our artifacts indestructible, we don't really care about casting removal spells because they kind of become one-sided. This means one of the goals of this deck is going to be giving our commander indestructible. That way when we cast something like an austere command that destroys all creatures, our artifact creatures and artifacts are going to be untouched by those removal spells, and I'm kind of leaning into that very, well, I won't say hard, but it is the main goal of the deck. It is the win con of the deck, besides just straight up combat damage, right? Take out all of the removal spells that just instantly wipe the board of all the creatures, and you're left with a very Timmy style spacecraft build that just wants to play bomb creatures that just want to take control of the game, because that's what our commander does best. He protects really, really annoying cards to deal with, and now you just can't Swords to Plowshare that one piece that you need to get rid of, or I'm going to win the game. Pretty simple here. Let's talk about some cards that have some pretty gross interactions with our commander. Bomb Pile and Nivendrel's Disc. Nivendrel's Disc is a 4 CMC artifact that says it enters the battlefield tapped, and then it has an ability to pay 1, tap it, and destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. What's messed up here is this is before they realize that effects like this need to sacrifice themselves, because if you give this artifact indestructible, it will not get destroyed. So that means we can indefinitely wipe the board as long as our commander's on the battlefield and has indestructible. The next one is Bomb Pile. This is a 4 CMC artifact as well. You tap it to flip a coin. If you win the flip, destroy all non-land permanents. So again, a mass board wipe that sticks on the battlefield if our commander has indestructible, and then it has indestructible as well, right? Now the main thing here is, even if our commander does not have indestructible, 9 times out of 10 we are still going to pull the trigger, right? Because all of our artifacts still have indestructible. This means we can pull the trigger, say bye-bye to our commander, and then just recast him later, right? That's not a huge issue for us to deal with. I'm also on Final Showdown, which is pretty good with this scenario. It's a 1 CMC instant that has Spree, so we can pay additional mana to get additional effects. The first one is all creatures lose all abilities until end of turn. Not useless, this can win you the game. The next one is choose creature you control. It gains indestructible until end of turn. Really good because our commander does need to have indestructible if we don't want to lose him every time we mass board wipe. And then the last one is literally just a board wipe for 5 mana that says destroy all creatures. So this card not only gives our commander indestructible, it also destroys all the creatures. So it's exactly what we want to see in this deck. And then the next one is a very, very mean card. So include this lightly because it will not make you very many friends, but I don't think a deck like this is supposed to make you very many friends anyway. So let's talk about World Slayer. This is a 5 CMC artifact equipment that says whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than the World Slayer. All permanents. Notably, that's land as well. So if you connect with the World Slayer, you're just going to win the game. It's literally a 5 CMC equipment that says win the game on it if you connect, which I think is worth including, especially in a deck that makes all of your things indestructible, or the majority of your things, right? Because we obviously built this deck around a huge artifact theme. The next thing I included here was artifact cards that just take control of the game. This deck needs something to end it, right? We can't just infinitely wipe the board and expect to win off of that. No, we need to play proactive creatures. That way, once we take control of the game, we're able to end it pretty quickly. You know, we want to be somewhat fair to our opponents whenever they ask, okay, cool, how do you win the game after that, right? And then you can show them your plan and they can either scoop or they can wait till you kill them, right? That makes sense. And then again, I do want to just say that even if we don't get the mass board wipe thing going, playing threats in this deck is just good because our commander protects them. The first one is Depth Shaker Titan. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is in the Precon, and I think it's just a really, really good card. 7 CMC Artifact Creature Robot. When this creature enters the battlefield, any number of target non-creature artifacts you control become a 3/3 artifact creature. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Notably, you can choose, so if you have a key piece, just don't turn it into a creature. And then it says each artifact creature you control has melee, trample, and haste, which are very, very good keywords to taking over the game and winning the game. Simulacrum Synthesizer needs no introduction, but this is a 3 CMC artifact that says whenever you cast another artifact spell with mana value 3 or greater, you get to create a 0/0 construct with power equal to the amount of artifacts you control. This card has won me many, many games, and I'm sure it's won you guys many, many games too if you play in artifact strategies, because this makes massive creatures very quickly. Imagine this in a green deck that just said every time you cast a 3 CMC creature, throw a 10/10 on the battlefield, because that is exactly what this card does. The Pride Wind is also very solid here. It's a 6 CMC legendary artifact vehicle that has flying, and whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white human knight creature token with this creature gets +2/+2 as long as an artifact entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So it essentially makes a giant board state of 4/4 creatures, and that can end out the game very quickly, especially when this is, again, an artifact-based strategy deck. Threefold Thunderhawk is another card that very quickly generates a board state and will take over the game if it's not removed immediately. It is 7 CMC though, but for 7 CMC it wins the game, so that's worth it. This creature enters with 3/1/1 counters on it, and then whenever this creature enters or attacks, create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. Then you can pay 2 to sacrifice another artifact and put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So not only does he make himself bigger, our commander can make him bigger as well, and then he's just going to make a massive board state, and that board state is going to have hexproof and indestructible, so it's going to be really hard for our opponents to deal with. I'm also including a couple Planeswalkers here as well, famously pretty good in decks that just keep wiping the board of creatures because they can't really deal damage to our Planeswalkers if they are sticking on the battlefield. We also do have a little bit of a proliferation sub-theme going on in the deck as well, so if you look at that, I think including some Planeswalkers makes a lot of sense. The first one is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. This one, if you played Standard, you're going to be very familiar with because it was a terrible, terrible card to play against for a long, long time. It's a legendary Planeswalker that says you can draw a card at the beginning of your next end step, untap 2 lands. Pretty useful there. Its -3 is put target non-land permanent into its owner's library. 3 from the top. Again, really, really useful. And then its last one is an ultimate for -8 that says you get an emblem with whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent an opponent controls. You just scooped if they ever got to that ultimate, and I think you still just scoop if anybody ever gets to that ultimate in this scenario as well, and that's why he's going to be included in the deck. The next one is Ugin, Eye of the Storm, a new one, but I think this one's going to be very, very good in the deck because of the amount of colorless spells we are playing. This is a 7 CMC legendary Planeswalker. It says whenever you cast a spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. Kind of crazy there. And then it says, whenever you cast a colorless spell, exile up to one target permanent that's one or more colors. So not only does he remove something whenever you cast him, but additionally, whenever you continue to cast colorless spells, he's going to keep removing pieces. Not okay. Then his +2 is you gain 3 life and draw a card. His minus or +0 is add 3 mana to your mana pool. And then his -11 is search your library for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them, then shuffle. Until end of turn, you may cast those cards without paying their mana cost. So that sounds like a way to exile a ton of things if we ever get to his ultimate. And again, this is kind of the big bombs category of what's going to win us the game once we get this strategy going. We do have some pretty busted card draw engines in this deck as well, so it's not uncommon to just wipe the board of creatures to buy us time and just sit on our card advantage pieces and wait for those to win us the game, because eventually we're just going to have too much advantage for our opponents to actually fight us. Insight Engine and the One Ring. Insight Engine's basically just a fair One Ring. You can pay 2 to put a charge counter on it, and then you get to draw cards equal to the charge counters on it. And remember, our commander can speedrun this too, because our commander can actually put 2 charge counters on this immediately. So you kind of get to draw 3 cards for 5 mana the first time this enters the battlefield. Really broken, and then from then on, it just gets absurd, right? Because next turn, not only are you going to put another counter on it, but your commander can still put 2 more counters on it. So the second turn you untap with this, you're drawing 6 cards, a new grip every turn. Not okay. And then the One Ring is just famously broken. You tap it, put a burden counter on it, and draw cards equal to the amount of burden counters on it. And then you are going to lose life at the beginning of your upkeep equal to the burden counters, but we don't really care about that. I did want to talk about some counter synergies as well. All Will Be One is going to win us the game in this deck if we have a decent board state. Whenever you put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, All Will Be One deals that much damage to target opponent, creatures an opponent controls, or planeswalkers an opponent controls. So we put 5 counters on something, we get 5 damage to throw at it. It's kind of like a Terror of the Peaks if Terror of the Peaks triggered on counters. It's really, really good in a deck that just throws around a lot of counters, and that's exactly what this deck does. Astral Cornucopia taps for mana equal to the amount of charge counters on it. Notably, this does cost XXX, but casting it for free and then just having your commander put counters on it is a next level play that I'm definitely going to be doing. Same with the Everflowing Chalice. This costs 0 but has kicker 2, and then it enters with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked. But again, if you just cast it for 0, put charge counters on it with your commander, you're kind of netting mana off of these, which is actually pretty insane the turn they come down. Lux Cannon, you get to tap it to put a charge counter on it, or you can remove 3 charge counters from it and destroy target permanent. Same thing, this one does take a lot to get going, but in this deck you tap it down the first turn, and then the second turn you're already ready to get rid of something because your commander can put 2 charge counters on it. The Eternity Elevator is a 5 CMC mana rock that taps for 3 mana, not terrible, but if you do get it to station above 20, it's just going to tap for mana equal to the amount of charge counters on it. Not going to be okay, especially in a deck that goes super, super wide. That might sound like a lot of power to be tapping for, but whenever we're making constructs that have 10 plus power, this happens very, very quickly. Now, I did want to mention some cards that are going to synergize a lot with our commander, and first thing we got to do is give this guy Indestructible. Staff of Hermes is super solid. It says as long as you have 30 or more life, equipped creature gets +5/+5 and has Indestructible. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to this creature. Not only is this really good because of the lifelink, remember, we are trying to prolong the game here because we are favored in the long game. As soon as we're able to infinitely wipe the board, our opponents are just going to be on the back foot, and then we're using all of the resources we've gathered from the game up to that point to just choke the opponents out of the game. They're probably going to wipe the board, or they're probably going to scoop the second that happens. Darksteel Forge is another kind of place for our commander. This is a 9 CMC artifact that says artifacts you control have Indestructible. Pretty simple there. It also does give itself Indestructible, so maybe your commander's been hated off the board effectively. You can still get off your synergy that wipes the board indefinitely with Darksteel Forge over here. Dreamtide Well seemed too good not to include. Remember, our commander does become active at 8 power, and he starts giving that broken, Indestructible, and hexproof ability. And then Dreamtide Whale just has 7 power. kind of crazy. A 3 CMC creature with 7 power. It does have Vanishing too, but also it says whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you proliferate. So it kind of just sticks on the battlefield. So it not only synergizes with all of the counters we're putting on our things, but it also just is a massive thing that can crew our commander very efficiently. Tezzeret the Seeker, another Planeswalker. Again, Planeswalker's famously good in decks that just hate on creatures, and this deck does hate on creatures. This can not only find us all of our artifact goodness that we need, such as our Nivendrel's Disc, our Bomb Pile, or even our sword that's just going to get rid of all the lands on the battlefield because of his minus ability. His plus ability untaps 2 artifacts, which is also pretty good, and then his -5 artifacts you control become artifact creatures with base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. So this is another card, once you get him onto the battlefield, if they don't remove him immediately, you're kind of going to end up winning the game. It's only a matter of time, right? You get to tutor up the pieces you need, you get to generate value with his +1, and then his -5 ends up turning all of your artifacts into a lethal threat. So again, just pretty good there. Another card I want to showcase is Illustrious Wanderglyph. This card keeps being way better than I expect. It's a 5 CMC artifact creature that's going to generate a artifact gnome on each upkeep, so that's 4 per rotation, and then it does give all artifact creatures +2/+2, which is absolutely insane. It buffs your entire board state up while generating a board state. It's not hard to just cast this guy and then get the Nivendrel's Disc lock online, and then you will be winning the game very shortly. Shirakai Genesis Engine, kind of the same thing here. We're drawing cards, we're generating 1/1 creatures because of that ability to draw 2 cards, discard a card, create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token, and then you're able to crew this guy up for 8, and he's an 8/8. So not only does this generate you value, it does also generate a board state. So those are the kind of cards we're looking for whenever we're talking about actually being able to end out the game. We're also on Salvation Engine, so it's not the worst idea to just go ahead and wipe the board, cast a Salvation Engine, and then have the Salvation Engine grow back your board. This says other artifact creatures you control get +2/+2. Whenever this vehicle attacks, return up to 1 target artifact creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now it does have crew 6, but remember we are generating some massive creatures, so even if we have something like a board of no creatures and then a Simulacrum Synthesizer on the battlefield and then up to 6 artifacts, we cast this guy, we're reanimating artifacts, and then we're instantly able to crew him up as well. So there's just a lot of scenarios where we end up just coming ahead of our opponents. Ripples of Potential is another card that's just really good in this deck. It says you can proliferate, then choose any number of permanents you control that had counters put on them this way. Those permanents phase out. So again, maybe we don't have our commander on the battlefield, we can cast Ripples, phase out all of our important things, and then go ahead and wipe the board, or, you know, flip the coin on the bomb pile and go for it. There's just a lot of other cards in this deck I want to talk about. Danny Pink's amazing here. It says your creatures gain the ability whenever they get a counter put on them to draw a card. So this can draw you cards equal to your board state with the right board state. Adaptive Omnitool is a card that I keep putting in artifact decks because it says equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Whenever equipped creature attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of your library. I'm also including Liberator Prime. This is an 8/8 for 5 mana. That's Vigilance, Trample, Haste. Whenever Liberator Prime recharge attacks or blocks, sacrifice it unless you pay 2 energy. This isn't an energy deck, but it does synergize with the proliferation, and he can also generate energy by paying 2, sacrificing an artifact. You get 2 energy, and you get to draw a card. So again, card advantage, and we just get an 8/8 beater. Just in closing, we want to get our commander on the battlefield. We want to get him to 8 power as soon as possible. Then we want to get some form of indestructible on him. That is honestly optional. As long as we have a board state, we really don't care if we lose our commander by wiping the entire board. Then we want to either find a board wipe or an artifact that just continuously wipes the board. Bonus points if it's World Slayer, because you're wiping out everybody's lands. The deck list will be in the description down below, and that's going to be where I end the video.